Good morning and welcome back. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be doing a touch of watercolour. So I'm just going to give everyone a few moments to join the live stream. Now it might take a bit longer than usual because I didn't set up an event for this one, so I do apologise. It's been a bit of a mad weekend. So what have I got today? I'm going to be working with some Inktense palettes, a waterproof die pad of your choice, and then we have a daffodil stamp. So you're going to need some watercolour suitable card, some coloured paper, and a scrap piece of card for if we want to do something like a little focal panel or if we want to do a sentiment. So I've already done a little file that I've already sent to my ScanNCut with some text that we can write. So it's all set to draw and that's already sent in lots of different fonts so that I can decide which one I want to use. Oh, excuse me. So without too much ado, let's get started. First of all, hi Carol, hi Deb. I hope you're both well and have had a good week so far. So it's been a bit of a mad one for us. So we've had a super duper tidy of the craft room. So I'm going to be working on to an A6 piece of card now. Although my stamp is much smaller than the A6, it's going to give me lots of room to kind of play. Okay. So let's move the mouse out of the way and let's crack on. So with my particular watercolour pad, you just want to get a bit careful because it is toxic if it's swallowed. So just take your time and don't get your finger in it. Or if you do, wash your hands well. Okay. And pop that out of the way for now. And let's stamp now. So you don't have to do this stamped image in black if you don't want to. If you want to use grey or a nice chocolate colour, that's going to work well too. You could also use an archival ink pad and actually pick out elements to colour. So for example, you could use like a darker yellow for the flowers and then a green pad to do your leaves. And it just makes that a little bit easier to hide the lines when you're watercolouring, if that's something that you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to grab my cloth and I'm just going to give it a very quick once over. Now, because it's got this ink on it, I'm going to set this cloth to one side and wash it out later. Okay, so I'm just going to tuck that in and pop that down. So we've got our stamp clean. Done that image, so for now I'm going to be very naughty and leave it on my stamp press. Let's tuck that out of the way. So we've got some clean water and just want to pop the lid on that, and I'm going to get my brush nice and wet to start with. So particularly if it's a new brush where you might have some size left in your brush, just want to make sure that we're kind of getting all that out along with any leftover watercolour from previous sessions. Okay, now in terms of our colours, we want to go for a nice sunny yellow, so that means that we're going to go to set one and we're going to go to the yellow there. So let's start off with that one. I'm going to turn that sideways, and you can see I've already kind of got a little bit of yellow started there. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Now Inktense paints are a little bit different to the average because they are permanent. So this means that we can do things like painting onto fabric with them. So this could just as easily be a piece of cotton that's got a nice tight weave. And you could do the same techniques as what I'm going to do. So you want to mix plenty of yellow because we've got 3 flower heads to do. going to keep this quite watery to start with. Okay, so Carol says she hasn't done any watercolour for ages, been doing pastel pencil, may have to get them back out again. Yep, definitely, Carol. So I'm going to just trace around the petals now. One of the things you're going to see, particularly with Inktense watercolours, is that it's going to knock your line work back a little, but that's not going to bother me too much on this one. Okay, and we're going to go around to the next petal. Now, one thing I will say is when you're doing this, just be mindful that if you try and do shading at this point, chances are your shading is going to blend into the next petal. So we want to kind of let a certain amount dry before we do shading. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't do wet to wet techniques for things like variations in colour. So and we're nearly there. So I've got this nice bright sunny yellow. Now, these two are kind of facing upwards, so they're going to have a little bit more light. So I'm just going to add a bit more water. And again, we can take that over like so. And this one here, like so. So where these two flower heads meet the green, you're going to kind of get a bit of a crossover. So if I go to set 2 and the lemon yellow, and you can see it's already got quite a greeny tinge to it anyway. So let's just clean my brush out slightly. Don't have to get it too clean for this one because we're only going pretty much like for like. And it's just to tone down that yellow at the base, like so. So you can see it's really subtle. And I'm just going to take that down like so. So it's not going all the way down the stems, it's just literally blending the two together. Alexa, stop. She keeps doing that, just randomly playing music. It's very freaky when she just suddenly does that. Okay, so we've got that green blending in. So while that is still wet, let's pull in our green from set 1. So if I just move that down just a little bit, I'm just going to drop that in right in there and just let that blend, and this one goes down the stem. I'm just going to do a little bit up the side of there, and then just follow that down. Okay, so far so good. And give that another little clean. Now let's get a fresh bamboo cloth, and I'm just going to give my brush a wash, because now we're going to start heading towards the oranges bit. So in set 1 we have mango, which is like a pale orange, and I'm just going to use a little bit of this, touching around the base of the trumpet of the daffodil, and then a little bit just under here. Now this isn't shading, this is just literally colour variation. Okay, so if there's places that you want to put it, and put it in. If there's something you want to miss, you can miss it out. So I'm just going to do a little bit here, just to kind of give that sense of you've got that reflection coming through from the trumpet, which is going to be orange when we get there. Okay, now with that little bit of orange on there, just going to clean my brush off, and while it's still a bit damp, not wet, just damp, just going to go back over that edge and blend that in. Now once Inktense dries, it's dry and that's it. It's going to be pretty permanent. You can heat set it on fabric as well if you want to. Button paper, it's kind of just stuck. There we go. So I've blended that in. Now we want to allow that time to dry. So we're going to go for a kind of breakout point and we're going to start down in the bottom. Oh blimey, Carol, that's far too much energy. So I'm going to go to the lighter green, which is, for those of you that have the palette, Kiwi. So with Kiwi, I'm going to just start down the bottom here. And just, so there's a stem there, we've got a leaf that's going to come through there, back up here, and back up there. Okay. Now, while that's still wet, I'm going to do a little bit mixing. So pick up a bit of that green. And I'm going to pick up a bit of yellow from my palette. So this saves you mucking up your paint for starters. It also means that we waste nothing. And we're going for that warmer yellow because we want to kind of keep that warmth in our leaves. If we went for the lemon yellow, while it would do a lovely blend, it's going to start to get kind of limey rather than leafy green. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a bit where we've got our yellow muddy or greeny colour, and that's going to be our next bit of shading. So we're just blending that in at the very top. Now if your petals are still wet, try not to touch them. Okay, I'm going to go and do these bits here. And you can see just by adding that small touch of green how much of a difference you've made to that colour. Now at the back, I'm going to drop in this lighter colour, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so we've got our base colour for our leaves. But now everything looks like it's on the same plane. So next you want kind of a bluey green. Now we could go to teal green if you've only got set one. You could go to Ionian green. I think that's how you pronounce it, if you have set two. So let's give it a go. This is going to be a little bit blue. Let's go a little bit more blue. There we go. Now this is going to be that we are kind of just glazing over the top. So you want to keep it nice and watery. But you also don't want your brush to be wet. So I'm just going to drag that over the edge of the palette. So I'm kind of taking a lot of that wetness out of there. I'm going to put a little bit just here so that it starts to push this daffodil forward. And we start to get a feeling of layers. So with this one here, the light would hit the flower first. So it's almost got like a bit of shadow that's going to fall in here. While this is going to still get a little bit light. And I'm just going to blend that out there on that little leaf. And again, where it falls to the one side, I'm going to take that. The light's coming down this way, so it's going to hit that flower before it gets to this leaf over here. And same underneath, I'm just going to add a bit of that cooler colour, just to say there's a shadow there. And a little bit here. in this back bit here, you just want to work out where the stem is to where the leaf is. So, like so. So that we're distinguishing between the leaf behind and the stem. While it's still wet, I'm just going to go a bit darker still in the places that really need it. So let's just do little touches of the blue. This is just going to help those sections pop that need to. And because our paint is now still wet, that should blend in nicely. I'm just going to do a little bit there too, and a little bit on our lighter stem. So the shadow on your leaf at the back is going to come down lower than the one on your stem, because that stem is further forward. Okay, so while that's all drying, let's do the trumpets next. So in set 2 you have a bright orange, which is really super duper strong. Okay, so I'm going to have a bit that's pre-mixed with also a little section that's going to be nice and watery. Now I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to go back up to set 1 and I'm going to have that pale orange loaded on my brush. And I'm just going to go over like so. Okay. So now I'm going to pick up a bit of that orange, that darker orange, and just blend that in a little bit. Okay. Now let's go to this next one, and we're going to carry on because we've still got plenty of that light orange loaded in our brush. And we're going to do these two bits up here. Go to our dark orange and we're going to brush that in and just let that blend. And again on this one. So trumpets are round if you look at it from the front, so your shadows are also going to insinuate that. So they're going to come up higher around the outside, so we get that feeling that it's going to be a hunt trumpet. Now Inktense dries quite quick, but you've still got a few little bits of wet areas just around here, so just be mindful of that. I'm just going to go back in up here and just use that stronger dark orange just to emphasize the fact that this tube is hollow. Then we can do shading after. So when we do our shading, we're going to go to complementary colours. So that means the opposite side of the colour wheel. Okay, there we go. And it's that it's going to make your image kind of come together really nicely. Because at the moment it looks like a lovely illustrative image, but it doesn't really look realistic yet. So when it's yellow, you're going to go to purple. When it's orange, you're going to go to blue. And believe it or not, when it's green, you're going to want to go to like a reddy brown. So let's start off with the blue. And I'm just going to touch this in because our orange is still wet. So it isn't going to take very much to do the shading. We're just going to touch that and just let it blend in. and it's going to make that trumpet start to really pop. Same here, I'm going to take it around that top edge of the trumpet. Let me just get that a little bit closer so you can see that a little bit better. There we go. So pick up a little bit more blue. I'm just going to drop that in there so that we get a nice curve now. Just because it went a little bit where I don't want it, I'm just going to tap that. Okay, so we've done our blue for our orange. But how do we differentiate here where we're going to have light hitting on top? So I'm just going to take a little bit just round the base, and we can just blot. So we only want the tiniest amount just to make that front bit of the trumpet just push forward that little bit. Okay. So now as we start to move into the yellow section of our daffodil, we're going to go to a purple. And you really want to have this nice and kind of watery and weak to start with, because that colour is really going to overwhelm your yellow if you're not careful. So I'm just going to take that around like so, and then I'm going to take it down the petal. And then think about where the light is hitting. So if we've got a petal that is curling, you're going to want to put a little bit of that shading at the bottom of the petal. Okay, and we can do the same here. And this bit's kind of tilting away from the light, so we're going to want to put a little bit more. Now, if at this point you think, oh, my shadow's not quite dark enough, don't be tempted to go straight back to your colour and drop in more. Just let it dry and then judge again after it's dried. It's easy at this stage to go one step too far and then you can't pull it back. Okay, so let's put up a bit more of that purpley colour, and this one's going to come round. I want to just tuck it in there like that. And we're starting to make it feel like our petals are on different layers. And our tube is going to slot into it for our trumpet. So let's just pull that colour up there. A bit round there. So there won't be much shading on these upper petals. Like so. And then onto these two flower heads at the top. So these get a little bit more tricky because we've got lots of curling and twisting. So at twist, you're going to want to put a little bit of shadow. And I think that is kind of underneath we're going to want to put in shadow. So I'm just going to go over that bottom edge. And I think that is away from the light. So in this case, this side petal, we're going to put in shadow. And then you also want to bear in mind the curve of the object. So I'm just going to put a little bit at the base. Okay, we're going to do the same here. A little bit at the base. So this time we're going to come down this side of the petal. Now, where we've got a bit where this petal's curling back over itself. Hi Sandra! We are going to just want to pop a little bit of shading just underneath to just lift that away. We're going to do the same again over here, just so that we kind of get that I'm catching the light look. And then these petals are going to be slightly darker over this edge. So there's our image. Now at this point you want to switch your attention to the background. So if you have a nice crackle stamp, you could stamp that over the top and then use that to kind of give you some little cells to work with for your background, so that you don't feel totally daunted by the fact that you've got this big white background to fill in. The other thing that you could do is ink blend around the edge of the shape, but I'm going to cut into this. So what I'm going to say is you would be better off doing a background than cutting on the ScanNCut, than trying to do it the other way around. So let's mix a nice well of colour. So let me zoom back out so you can see set one. There we go. And I tend to have little bits of paint that are hiding around the corners of my palette, and sometimes that's just enough to give me the start of a mix. So I'm just going to add a little bit of light blue to that. Now the blues in this palette are quite strong, so it really doesn't take much, so hence I try and get the bits around the edge. So let's get a little bit more water. Now if you've got a bigger brush you can do this kind of all in one go, but I'm just going to start by just roughing this out, and when I come back in I'm just going to come back in with just clear water, and I'm going to blend that first bit of paint out. Okay, now when I've done that I'm going to go back to the blue and I'm going to do the next bit. Now I'm not worrying at this stage about going up to the edges, and if you want to stretch your paper you can do. So blue over here. Now I'm just going to very carefully cut that in around here. And I don't mind I've got a bit of a hard line there because that's just going to be where my cloud is. And we're going to take that down like so, and into the water. Oh, Thea, I'm sorry to hear that you didn't get a notification again. So as a rule of thumb, you'll always find me here at 11 on a Wednesday. Barring illness, I'm just going to get a bit of stronger blue over here now. So we start to get down towards that kind of horizon line, even if you're not going to do anything in terms of the foreground, you want to start to get a little bit stronger. So it doesn't have to be a lot strong, but a little bit. Remember that. Okay. Let's just get some more water on there. Okay, so now as we start to get towards the ground, I'm going to put some clear water. And remember that green that we mixed before? We're just going to dot that in. And we're just going to let that kind of blend out. Now, closer to our daffodil, we can pick up some of that greeny, shadowy colour that we had. We can let that blend out. If you have any lines that start to form, just get a clean wet brush and just blend that out. And I quite like that. Maybe a little touch of the dark blue just to kind of seep that in there. I'm going to take that from like the base of the leaves, so we're kind of getting this sensation of it growing up through the, like so. And then just touch in with a bit more green, kind of just lost that green. And I think I'm happy with that. So now we can go back and have a look at our flowers and go, well, do we need to do anything in terms of either lifting sections or having any more shading? So I might just try and lift a little. Now with Inktense, sometimes lifting won't work, but it does depend on your paper, so always give it a go before trying to go directly to white paint. So we're lifting a little bit. We don't want to lift too much because it's still a yellow petal and it's not glossy. You only want to get back to white if you're painting a really glossy surface like a car or something like that, usually something man-made. So I'm just going to lift those couple of sections. And all I'm doing to do that is just a bit of clear water over the top and then just blot it with your cloth. Just try and make sure it's a clean bit of cloth because otherwise that's when you can start to muddy your colours. Okay, and I think with that I'm happy. Now we want to set that to one side and let that dry completely. Now if you're in a rush you can use a heat tool, but what you can find sometimes is that that will not only warp your card, but sometimes you can find that it lightens your colour a bit too much as well. So as a rule, air drying is best. So let's move these out of the way. Set that to one side. Now I have my colours of cards, so if I bring that in just quickly, we can just make sure that the card kind of matches our illustration. Okay, so with that done, we kind of want to start thinking about the layout. So we could go for a nice oval, and if we're going to do that, then we need to kind of work out what we're going to do with the remaining shapes. So we could go and block that in and have it so it's literally half and half, or we can chop into it. So let's get, I'm going to pick up a card blank at random just because I can. A6 it is today. So with our A6 card, we can go and actually line that up as a border, which I think would look quite nice. So let's go for that. I'd rather get the ScanNCut to do that. It's sometimes just easier to just go for a trimmer. So I'm going to chop a strip like so. Now, when it comes to doing card fronts, if you've got an element like this which is going off your spine, I prefer to wrap around so that it has a neat edge, because sometimes if you trim it, it doesn't look quite finished. So let's grab some double-sided tape. Now this is only paper, so there's no need for red liner tape, just plain old double-sided. I did put up a manual ones here, so perhaps you missed it. I will try and remember to tag you in future. So there's our adhesive strip. Now I want that to go around about there, so let's peel this one off first. So literally all I have on there at the moment is one strip of adhesive, and that's going to be going to the front. I'm going to line that up on my mat. Let's go a bit higher so you can see what I'm doing. And there we go. And let's go to our fine line, our grid. Okay. Find the bit of tape. Don't know about you, but I seem to spend most of my crafting time trying to find the ends on my tape. So this can wrap around our spine. love double-sided backings. Come on. Can't even blame the nails. So now what I'm going to do is just wrap that around. Try and keep it as close to that spine as possible. Like so. And give that a good press down. So at this point you're not committed to your way up. So if you decide that you want to use that side, you can do it. If you decide you want to use this side. Okay. So now what I'm thinking is, let's go for a bit of colour blocking and we can pop on our square. So let's grab a pencil. I'm just going to do a little mark at the point where I want to trim it. And we can always tidy this up after if we need to. So, what's on your desk ready for crafting? It's a special birthday card. Is it a special project for DT or just generally crafting the just the journey? Okay, so let's get this right way up. Always helps. There we go. Okay. Let's get this around the right way in place. There we go. So now all we've got to do is our ScanNCut elements, and hopefully the watercolour is dry by now. So we want to grab a cutting mat. Any cutting mat will do. So long as it's sticky. So I'm just going to get my Artisticks one. Now, sticky might be interesting on this one, but we'll see how we go. So let's pop that onto our mat. Now, because we were doing direct cut or using a shape to cut over the top, you want to just bring it in and down a bit. Now that I can see is not sticking today, so let me just grab some masking tape. Oh, we can go from there. Now, sometimes you'll see me use colour masking tape for doing this. That's where I want to have a reference for edges and so on and so forth. But for something like this, where I'm just going to be focusing on that inner point, I don't mind too much that it's not going to be coloured. Now, if you have something like this where you've got a little tail for your masking tape, make sure that you take it off. The reason being, it will quite happily get stuck in your machine, and we don't want that to happen. while you're here, you can also decide which material you want to write your sentiment onto. So it could be that you go back to one of the coloured cards, like the yellow or the orange, or we could use that scrap of watercolour card. So if we go back to our card design, we're going to have our watercolour panel like this, then our sentiment here. Now I think the orange would look good, just to have that kind of contrast. Carol says, I do have a birthday card for a friend to make. I'm also trying to do a pastel pencil drawing in the Mile train. Wow. That is quite something to take on, Carol, because you've got an awful lot of really fine detail for doing a pastel drawing. So I take my hat off to you for that one, because I don't think I would attempt that with pastel pencils, to be honest. Okay, so with that loaded on, we're going to be able to take that to our machine. So let me just move that out the way so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to load my mat. And let's go to the ScanNCut camera. So hopefully you can see me up the right way, because I've had a rejig with the cameras. So you may notice that all the angles are kind of changed, but hopefully you can see the screen better for it. So far everything seems to be working better, so that's always good. So I'm going to go to pattern, and I'm going to put in a basic shape that I think is going to work for my design. So in this case I want a thin oval. So number 66 will do. Okay, and don't worry about the size at this point or the rotation, so I'm just going to add that to the mat. Then we're going to go to a background scan and do a background scan. I'm just going to catch that out the back of the machine. Just so it doesn't come off the mat too much. It may be time for this mat to transition to its next use. So, edit, object edit, rotation. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Now, if you're on a CM and you do that, just bring it into the middle first, but on an SCX you don't have to worry about doing that. It's brave, Carol. Very, very brave. So, we know that our base card is, let's get this right, 15 centimetres tall. So at the moment our oval is 10 centimetres tall. So we've got a little bit of room to play with. So I'm going to go OK. I'm going to go to resize, and we can pop that up in proportion. Okay. Now at this point, obviously I'm aware that the top of my card is just there. And I'm also aware that I want to get a little bit more in. So how can I do that? And what you need to do is we're going to press the ratio button, and we're just going to take that width up a little bit, like so, and go OK. Okay, now I can use my nudge keys just to nudge that into its finished place. And I'm happy there. So we've got a bit of our sky in. And it may seem like you've done a lot of work that you're cutting out, but don't worry too much about it. It's okay. So, let's go OK. And I'm going to cut that one out first. Now, because it's a basic shape, we can just use our auto blade. So pop that in. I've also been doing yet more Well, I can't say I've been doing vinyl this time because I have been doing some rhinestone, so I might just give you a little sneak peek of something that's going to be on some of the blogs. So let's turn off half cut, and just going to put my pressure down just a notch. So since I've changed my blade, I noticed my pressure is having to go a little bit higher to get the same level of cut. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to go okay. There we go. So usually what I'd say is when you're doing this on ScanNCut, just let it have that little bit longer of a drying time, but because we're live, we'll go for it. Okay. There we go. So let's go back overhead. And we've got our oval. So there's a little bit of masking tape stuck on the edges. So let's just peel that off very carefully. So always peel masking tape back on itself to avoid pulling your surface of your card a bit too much. There we go. So we have our oval. Now we need to do our sentiment. So let's take our orange card, and I'm just going to just pinch a couple of bits of masking tape just to fix that on. So again, I'm going to go 1 inch in and down. I'm going to attach a bit of masking tape top and bottom this time, because it's only paper, so it's not exactly going to take a lot of pressure to cut it anyway. So we're going to swap to the vinyl blade as well, which is going to give us a better cut finish. Okay, just realised the little picture's upside down, that's not good. So I'll sort that out after. So let's reset our machine, and as I said, I've already sent my text from Canvas. And there we go. So, going to do a background scan because we've got our card on our mat. Not only that, it eliminates that issue of having the previous scan on the mat. But you can also just turn the scan off. So we've got our lots of St. David's Day to decide from. So I didn't know exactly which style I was going to be going, so I thought I'd hedge my bets and have them all ready to draw. Now let's just see if we can just lighten up our scanner touch. So if we go for our middle setting, it's going to make it light enough that we can see our text. So you can decide which one you want to go with. Now, at the moment, these are all quite big as well, so we're going to need to shrink them down a little bit. So you're looking, when you want to shrink something down, particularly with text, for something that is quite open. So out of all of these, the most open is our centre one here. So we'll pull that one out, so we can say that that's the one we want. If we go to Edit, Multi-Select, which is the little 3 square icon, I'm going to tap off so nothing is selected. Then we can go to our window select, and we're going to take that up to surround all those other options that we don't need. So I'm going to go OK, OK again, and then use the bin. Now if you're doing lots of cards at once, so let's say you're doing all back to birthday cards, all those sentiments are still up in the cloud, even though we've deleted them off our machine. So it's really easy to just go, actually, I'll just pull that back down. Or if you make a mistake, you've always got that copy in the cloud that is correct. So, oh dear. The bath had to have a bath, you know it's bad when. So, let's go to Object Edit, Resize, and we're going to shrink that down. So, when I'm doing that, I'm kind of looking at the width compared to my card. So, the width of my card is about 10.5 centimetres. So we don't want to take up the entirety with our sentiment. So by shrinking it down to that kind of like 5.5, you're kind of saying, okay, it's going to be just so slightly over the middle. So that's your drawing. But then you're going to want to cut that out. So I'm going to go to Add, Pattern, and we can choose a shape that's going to surround it. Now, you could use a basic shape to do that, or you can go to the designs and you might want to do a tag, for instance. So you've got some nice tags that you could use. Now, what I'm thinking is something that is fairly plain and fairly thin. So let's go for this one here. So at the moment, this has kind of got like a dashed line down the middle of it. So I'm not going to worry about that at this point. I'm going to go OK, and add it to my mat. So it's massive, and it's going to create like a little fold over tag card if you want to. It looks very funky, but not what I'm intending to do today. So for starters, let's see if we can wild out that detail. So add, pattern, basic shape. And let's just get square, and again, we're not going to worry about size. So if we bring this over our tag, it's going to be massive. So we're going to edit, Object Edit, and we're going to shrink that down. Maybe it's just a little bit smaller. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to go to nudge and just nudge that so it's more central. Okay. I'm going to select that and the outside tag shape. Okay. Object Edit, Wild, and let's see if it will let us. See, sometimes it won't, but there are ways and means to everything. So I'm going to select that outside shape. We're going to go to Offset. We're going to give it the minimum amount of offset that it will do, in this case 1mm. Okay. Okay, and at the moment it's still got our original shape selected, so we want to delete that because we don't want it anymore. So we've offset all these elements and they're grouped. So let's ungroup it. And now we're pleased to know that when we go into multi-select, tab off, we're going to do our window select. Window select, okay, and it's going to select those elements in the middle. We're going to go OK, delete. Okay, job done. So now we can rotate that so it's round the right way. Now with arrows, it always feels better to have them point to the right in most cases, but for this one, because our sentiment is kind of going to hang over the edge, it's actually going to want to be the other way around, and we do actually need to have it pointing the right way for a sentiment. So I'm going to place that over the top, and then we can just shrink it down. So it's going to fit in both in our card and also our sentiment. Now when it's resizing, it's going to do that from the centre, so if you need to readjust as you resize, just do that. And then you can always go back and continue that resize operation after. So I'm quite happy with that. And if you want to get really detailed, you can do alignment and things, but sometimes with arrows you're going to find that alignment isn't going to look optically correct, even though it's mathematically correct. So that's just something to bear in mind. So I'm going to go okay, okay, okay. Now, when we're drawing, you're going to want to draw first, cut second. So let's just pop back overhead and let's just find a pen. So I have a little case full of goodies, and I think I'm just going to go for a nice black gel. So this is a Helix Oxford gel pen. I like gel pens because they've got nice metal tips, which are nice for doing detail work. So particularly if you are doing text, you're going to want to have something that has that little bit of fineness to the nib to be able to get the details. Now, we also need to get our pen holder and also the little guide. So, you're going to pop the guide onto the end of the pen holder, cap off the pen, slide it in, then we want to go through this end bit here. So sometimes it takes a little bit more of a push than others. You just want to also make sure that it's going through nice and evenly, and that's going to kind of dictate how aligned your text is. So if it's a little bit out, it's not too bad, but if it's a lot out, then it's an issue. Now, if ever you draw a text and it looks like it doesn't make sense and it looks like gobbledygook, usually what it is, it's that the pen isn't tight enough in the holder, so you always want to just give it a little tug and a little push to make sure it's staying put. Likewise with your guide, if I just pop that back on for a minute, you want to make sure that you can hear that grate, because then you know the nib is in contact with the guide. Let's pop that into the holder and over onto our machine. We go okay. We're going to do that draw operation first. And if you have any alterations that you want to make to settings, it really does depend on the pen. But I know the last time I was doing any drawing with this, I used another pen in the same range. So I can just go start. Now, elements that you create on your ScanNCut are cut and draw. Elements that you send from Canvas, the desktop version, are either cut or draw, and you have to specify that in the software before you send it. You can't change it in the machine. Whereas Canvas Online, you can have a cut only line, a draw only line, or a cut and draw line. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're looking at the different platforms, why you would choose one over the other. So if you've enjoyed today, do give me a like or a heart or whichever one you want, depending on which platform you're on. It does make a difference to the algorithms and all that. And if you haven't done so already, just do subscribe as well. So bear in mind that our outer shape was done on the machine. That means it's drawn, but it doesn't have to be the end of the world. So we'll see how it goes when it comes to cutting it out. Now, always put the cap back on your pen and then carry on. So there you go. Okay, and we're going to go to cut. Now remember, I said this is thinner, so we're going to go and pop our vinyl blade in. Or if you have your manual cut blade from your CM, then just remember to lower that down to about 1 to 2 for thinner paper. So I'm going to drop my pressure, or in this case up it, because we're going to the one way. It's a bit of a weird one. It takes more pressure to do less pressure. Yeah. So we'll go, okay. And let's go for it. Okay, so let's have a look, see how that's looking, because sometimes you can never judge it until you actually put it on the card as a layout. Now, just realised, first thing I'm like, where do I put that? Let's get my little spatula. So, metal spatula, particularly important with paper, and let's go back overhead. There we go. So we have our sentiment now. I've got my little oval. We can put that over the top. Now, because of the limits in terms of shapes and things, you might decide that actually you don't like that little tail bit on here, in which case you can just trim that off, that's fine. So I'm just looking at the spacing, and I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. So let's get the trimmer. Now I really like this Tomahawk trimmer because it's got this raised bottom edge down here, and it means I can put that up to it. And there we go, nice and easy. And you could 3D these up if you want to. I'm not going to, just for time today, because shock horror, it's on 12 o'clock already. Ian will be turning up in the chat cone. Hello. So I did say earlier in the week that we were going to go live one evening, and we intended to go live Monday night, and then something come up. Then Tuesday night, and something come up. So we will try again tonight, because we want to show you some other bits and pieces. But failing that, if the same thing happens tonight, then there might be something else we can show you as well tomorrow, which will be really fun. So this is something we have in development, so it'll be interesting to see it on a live, to say the least. But you know us, we like to challenge ourselves and the technology. Okay, so if you wanted to do like a shadow layer for this, you could do, so that you've got like a nice little border. And right, and because this is paper and my watercolour card's quite thick, I'm actually going to kind of cheat a little bit on my adhesive. So here's another top tip. If you are working with a random pad like I do most of the time, where you've got kind of different thicknesses of card, then attach your adhesive to either end and don't try and do it in the middle, and you'll kind of avoid that little bump that you sometimes get. But yes, Carol, you are gonna like what I'm working on. You are so gonna like what I'm working on, because you did the Christmas house with us, so you've kind of used this before, kind of. It's going to be a whole pad, which can be fun. So I'm going to bump this up to the edge and press that down, and just let that go over there. So that way that centre section is kind of floating, so we're not getting a crease. So what time? We are going to try and aim for 7 o'clock if it's tonight, but then you won't see the new thing. But if it's 7 o'clock tomorrow night, then you will. Fingers crossed. As long as Andy can get it done in time for us. But yeah, it's going to be fun. And thank you, Deb. So it's really nice to use the new kind of studio setup. So it's good to see which bits are working, which bits aren't working so well, and then try and tweak those. But it's nice to have it all kind of organised now. So whereas before I had this hang on, let's zoom out a little bit. So ScanNCut is this way, and we had to do it there, which it is still kind of. We've got Gemini this way, heat press this way. Well, now we have printer that's going to be able to feed here, so we're going to be doing lots of print projects. So that might give you a little bit of a hint to what something new is. Yep, there is definitely such a word as springy. I would say put Tigger on it, but you know, licensing and all that. So, plus there's some other things that might be on the table. So Carol, you're up north. We might be seeing you. You never know. So this year is the year to get back into classes. So. Right. So that needs washing. That one's done. So I can get back in there. And I hope you've enjoyed that. And we haven't got Louise on stream to do the translation, Sandra, and I definitely don't want to try and do the pronunciation because I will make a horrible job of it. Which is really bad, considering my Welsh should be so much better than it is. We're not that far away. So I hope you have a fantastic day. If you have any issues with, you know, ScanNCut or crafting questions, I will be about for most of the afternoon. So I'm going to be doing. Oh, there you go. Yes, Carol, I am totally a coward when it comes to languages. I'll have to tell you about a little reason why. Then you can have a giggle in private. I'm not saying it on stream. It's just too embarrassing. So, take care, everyone. Have a great St. David's Day, and I will see you again on Friday, either in person or in the chat. So, watch this space. You never know. And take care.